Okay, so in the last couple of weeks in lessons, we've been working on scenes 13, 14, 15 and 16. Now, and 12, sorry. Now these scenes were only quite short, so we went through them quickly. And we didn't actually need that many lessons to go through them, so I'm going to do and talk through them all together because they were shorter. And I felt like they were less relevant to the earlier scenes, less important to the play. Still quite relevant in the fact that it's like the endings and it's the conclusion of things. I'm going to talk about the ideas of the conclusions, but I'm going to also talk about the run-throughs and some of the directions there. I'm not in scene 12, so I don't know an awful lot about scene 12, but the main idea behind it is Bonnie in her workplace, how she's not coping very well. She admits to being stressed and isn't very polite towards someone who is there inquiring about their grandmother. This is the character of Luke. He's not a very pleasant character in himself, but it shows how Bonnie is not coping well from all the stresses. These cracks are starting to show into even her work, the place that she often finds distracting herself or a way of a distraction. In the centre is John and Anna. She's talking about walking, and John is saying how everything has been painful for her, and it's quite unusual because it's something that's quite, he's not spoken to her in a while, and this is him coming back into her life, and she's talking about the whole world really philosophically, and feeling lonely and not feeling steady. And this is all about how she never felt steady even when she was young, because there's Carol and Anna in the Carol scene as well when Anna was young, played by Leah, and it's the same interaction there, but Carol is losing it as well because she has a headache, and she asks if Anna is feeling steady also. So that's scene 12. Scene 12 is basically I feel the next step onto scene 13 really, because scene 13 is a bigger scene when it comes to the actual developments of the characters. So in scene 13, over at Carol's side, it's talking about, between a doctor and her, talking about the idea that she would want to kill herself. She says, "I came to the decision a long time ago that it would be necessary to end my life." Chip directed the Carols to emphasise the word necessary, because she also repeats that word. So it's talking about how she feels that she has come to that conclusion, that there is no other possible way for her to want to live on. There is no possible other outcome of this. She's going to end her life no matter what this doctor says. He is more considerate and more kind, probably one of the nicest doctors there is, Mark, and he talks to her and tries to get her to think about Anna, but she says a couple of things that's quite questioning as the audience. She says, "I've been crawling to get out a window for 16 fucking years, raising his child," realising that it's her own child also, and saying that she stayed for her whole life even though she's only 16. This scene itself I haven't looked at in a lot of detail also. We looked at and had a discussion about it, but because this is not my scene, but I think it's a really important scene because all of the dialogue going on is about Carol wanting to leave Anna because she feels Anna is ready, because the only reason she was staying was because of Anna, and now she feels like she wants to leave. And the person who's playing Mark, who also plays Jamie in the other casts, I think has to play this quite calmly and quite gently, and it's still a doctor who's not listening to her because he doesn't want her to kill herself, but is more of a considerate doctor, and probably one of the only totally nice male characters in the whole play. So it's an interesting scene on that side, and you learn a lot about how Carol is ready, and nothing, and I think at this point as well the audience realises that nothing that the doctor's going to say will change her mind, and I think when it comes to this side of it, we're going to have to look at how it'll link in with the other scenes, especially because the centre scene is the one I'm in. So this is the scene with ECT, with Anna and May. May is my character. She is the main nurse who is delivering the ECT shocks to Anna. When we were doing this, we looked at a couple of videos for research of how the shocks might happen, especially in this century, because the shocks are different to how they would have been administered a long time ago, but still quite a not nice procedure. But it does say specifically in the play, in the script, that they do this with great care and kindness. The nurses perform it with great care and kindness, and it's gentle, and it's a caring action, and it's not something that is rushed or done harshly, even though the action itself is not very nice. So I think this provides juxtaposition, because it's something that's not nice and causing the patient pain, or should be helping them, but isn't a very nice thing, that's done with such care. So in that sense, that's all that's really happening in the centre scene, and this is something that we had to look at a lot, because Carol has before said that she doesn't want ECT again, and she doesn't want to do it. It's quite conscious as well, because Anna has ended up in the same situation. In that moment when we thought Anna was getting better, it ends up, and this is the turning point, when we realise she's gone mad from scene 11, and then gone on a walk on scene 12, and come back and start still mad, talking about chaos and, you know, all these thoughts and feelings that she has. ECT is a way of the doctors administering, or, you know, curing this mindset that she's in. But as we already know, that's not going to work from the title of the play. Finally, on the other side of the stage, we've got Jamie and Bonnie. So that's her dad and Bonnie. This is the only scene, I think, that Jamie and Bonnie are together, because he never was there for her. We don't really know much about Jamie and Bonnie beforehand, whether they were stayed together, and whether they were close, and whether he cared for her. But we find out in this scene that he wants her to sell the house, and he wasn't there for her, that he couldn't stay in the house, he couldn't stay with her, and he had a new family and new grandkids. So this whole dynamic makes you feel sorry for Bonnie and have more of an understanding again at why she is the way she is. She appears more human and more like natural in this, showing more emotion and more normal, if you like, because of the way she responds. She says, "You're suddenly bothered, and you've got grandkids, I get it, you need to buy them something. Is your wife after it? What are you doing here?" It's a hard situation for Bonnie to be in, and things just keep getting worse. I feel like Jamie never had a conversation to her about her past, her life, and everything that went on with Anna, because obviously Bonnie doesn't know, because Anna died when she was only a baby. So we don't actually see Anna kill herself yet, but that's coming soon. And it's all of this Jamie not really telling her anything, and she feeling that he's not really her father figure. She'd never really had that attachment to him. And I think whilst that's going on, in the other scenes you see Anna physically being electrocuted, you see Carol already made her decision to kill herself, and it makes you question the fate of Bonnie and what Bonnie will do next and what's going to happen in her life. It makes you think that there is potential that she probably will kill herself, which what makes the ending so different, because we've read to the end, and it makes it seem different because she doesn't, and we don't know what happens after the play, but it talks about sterilisation instead as something that's different. I think the main thing for me that's important for me in this scene, because I'm doing the ECT, is figuring out a routine that I think we're going to work on soon, because we didn't really know what we were doing when we were practicing. But some sort of electrocution, because it's a long time whilst the other scenes are going on, and I think to not draw too much attention to it, but for it to be there in the background sort of representing all of it overall. Next we go to scene 14. I'm not in scene 14 either, but scene 14 is an important scene on Carol's side between John and Anna when she's 16. This is the scene where they find out that Carol has just killed herself. She jumped in front of a train. This is an important scene for Anna and John together. John has a large monologue where he talks about what had happened. It's a hard scene to watch, but I think it was impending. I think everyone knew that it was going to happen because of how certain Carol was that she was going to kill herself in the last scene beforehand. I wasn't in this scene, but I think that this was an interesting end because John was a train driver, and I'm not sure how they were directed to do this, but John to become quite emotional, I feel, would be the correct thing, and for Anna to sort of be confused because she doesn't realise when she comes and meets him somewhere. She talks about where's mum. At the same time, Anna has baby Bonnie in a basket, and she doesn't really say much. She's just looking over her and looking after her. And the other scene is a swimming scene with Bonnie, just a woman calling Anna, "Anna, are you in here?" as her daughter's name. That would have some sort of response from Bonnie, the shock, obviously, because that's her mother's name, and I think it will play games with her mind again. You would think that maybe she would start to go mad like Anna did, or maybe she would start to want to leave the world like Carol did, but I think that quite a lot of focus is now put on Bonnie because of you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know whether she'll end up with the same fate as Carol, and Anna soon will. So this scene is quite short, but a lot of emphasis is drawn over to Carol's side because of the actual impending suicide. I think in itself isn't so much a shock because you know it's coming, but is sad to hear and see, obviously, because it's a distressing thing. I think if they do this well with good emotion, then it could be quite effective in showing how the characters and how it affects John, because I'm not sure whether at this point he expected it or not, but he wasn't in the last couple of scenes with Carol, made her feel alone, and I think that he wasn't really aware of everything that was going on, and neither was Anna. And the next scene is scene 15. I am in this scene. Because we are getting towards the end of the play and Carol is dead, there are only two sides of the stage that are now being used, which is Anna's side and Bonnie's side. The other side is clear. This sort of shows how similar in the beginning, where it started off with Carol's scene, added in Anna's scene, and then all three were added in, and they were going on simultaneously. And I think this somehow shows symmetry to the beginning, but sort of, I feel like a sequence of events that have happened and occurred and had a knock-on effect, like dominoes, and I think is clever because by showing that that scene has finished, the next scene was going to finish soon, and it shows how Bonnie's scene is going to last till the end, but after that is left to interpretation. So in this next scene 15, Anna's side is also important because this is the scene where she kills herself also. She kills herself in the bath, like Carol's first suicide attempt. I think at this point Anna knows what she's doing, but she's gone mad. She has a long monologue where she talks about line's gone, hook's gone, kettle's gone, milk's gone, don't cry, back to sleep, to sleep, to sleep, the red bit, cut it out. All of these weird words that she just repeats that have not a lot of sense to them. I think it's all this brain explosion of all these things that she's feeling all at once, and the stress of having a baby and the overwhelming feeling of having a baby that she can't cope with. I think she thinks that it would be better off, and it's sort of an escape. And I don't 100% know how she would feel that this would make life better for Bonnie, but I think she does. I think she thinks that she can't cope and be there for Bonnie, so she wants to leave. And there isn't a lot of direction in the script, so I think Chip just told them to walk backwards, to say the words themselves, and then to say them to Bonnie, to baby Bonnie in the basket, and to walk away. We had a lot of initial ideas about using some sort of bath, but in the end it was too difficult, so there is ideas about it, but I think it'll be very much down to when we're looking at props and set whether we can use that or not, and to how we're going to do that. But that's not something that we've specifically looked at yet, because all it says is that she kills herself. On the other side of the stage is Bonnie and a doctor called Diane. I play Diane, me and Maya. This is the conversation between the doctor and Bonnie talking about sterilisation. This, I think, would shock the audience, because you would think that maybe she would try to kill herself, but sterilisation, the idea that she wants to stop the line, she doesn't want any more suicides, and she doesn't want to have a baby because she doesn't want them to inherit the traits, and down the line she doesn't want them to have this same horrible feeling that she does of not knowing. And I think because she has no understanding and she didn't actually know her mother, I think that's why she doesn't kill herself, because she has not the same experience. I think perhaps if she would have known her mother, then she might have been more likely to kill herself, or Alice Birch might have made her kill herself instead of have her sterilisation, because of the things she would have known and the similarities she would have had. I think it's interesting that they chose to sterilise, because obviously she is a lesbian, so the likelihood of her getting pregnant is very low. But she wants with absolute certainty. She speaks about the principle of it, and she says quite a poetic last thing, that it goes no further, no deeper, no longer, that it finishes here. You see her cry and break down, and I think it's a new type of emotion that we've had, because Bonnie has not showed a lot of emotion throughout the whole thing until she has a shout at Joe, and she cracks and she has this explosion and is shouting and is angry, but then she calms down a bit more. But then I think this is the most genuine emotion that we've seen Bonnie show, because she's crying and she's desperate and she begs and she says please. And even though the doctor's not got an understanding of why she would possibly want to do that, because she's not in a relationship, there is this sort of understanding from the audience, I feel, because she's desperate. Bonnie is desperate, and it's to see her in such a dehumanising way, it's quite upsetting, and the effect of the suicide, that her mother's suicide, that's had on her. And I think because it's happening at the same time, you can see that that is affecting that straight away. I think in the terms of characters of Diane and Bonnie, they show contrast, because Bonnie is an expert in her field, she knows what she's doing, she's quite professional, but you've seen her deteriorate in her work because of everything that's going on in her life. And I think that she is a higher and more qualified doctor than Diane, but so this makes it quite an awkward interaction, because Diane is trying to talk to her as if she's a patient but knows she's a doctor, and Bonnie doesn't want any counselling, she doesn't want any talking, she doesn't need that, she just wants the procedure to be done. She knows that she's not allowed to do that, she knows she's a doctor, but she just wants the procedure to be done and dusted and finished. She doesn't need anything else, and I think that that shows a lot about Bonnie's character, and she feels that Diane is someone who's just standing in her way, and that's important. Finally, scene 16 is only Bonnie on stage because Anna has killed herself, and it shows how this is the final bit. This scene is very short, it's only a page long, and there's not a lot to it, but I think it's a good way of ending. There's a woman who's come to buy the house. The house has such reference throughout the whole play, a massive symbol throughout the whole play, and I've talked about how I felt that it was strong in symbolism throughout the whole play. There was a woman who, with a small child, who comes to buy the house and to look at the house. Bonnie suggests that they pick some plums for the picnic because they're lovely. And I think it's about her letting go and moving on. And personally, I like to think about if Bonnie would have killed herself after this scene or not, or potentially in the future, whether she couldn't carry on or not, or whether she just let it all go and forgot about it and just moved on, whether she was sterilised or not. And I think that linking it back to all the way back to the beginning, with the first initial suicide, I think everybody now feels free. And that's a good completion for the play. And the whole message of the play, to finally feel free, and women's independence and women feeling free.